not really graphic design, it's more business related. So I'm talking about Adobe Acrobat in the context of graphic design. And in that case, it's basically just to create PDFs so that anybody can view it. You don't have to worry about what computer they're using and what fonts they have and all that kind of stuff. And you can automatically create a PDF from InDesign, from Illustrator, and from Photoshop. So that comes in very handy. It's really great that Adobe. I'm sure it kind of sucks that they're a monopoly, but it's really great that these programs have become so easily transferable to go from one to the other, because it used to not be that way. There used to be a lot more file extension issues and compatibility issues that there really aren't anymore. So we are very lucky. Even more so now that web design programs were bought by Adobe, and now Dreamweaver and Flash used to be Macromedia, now they're Adobe too, which makes it even easier. Because all of these programs, Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, have basically the same user interface. And Dreamweaver and Flash, although the different tools, the interface is the same as far as, everything kind of looks the same. The Move tool looks like an arrow, and all throughout. So it's a little easier to find your way. The Pen tool looks the same and all of them. So that being said, let's see. Back to InDesign real quick. We talked about Adobe Acrobat. It's easy to create a PDF, and it kind of flattens all of these elements, the text boxes and picture boxes and fonts and all that. InDesign, otherwise, if you're creating a file for press, and I guess they'll save that for the press conversation. Basically, you have to collect all these things if you don't create a PDF. You have to collect all your images, all your fonts, your document, and send all that to the printer. That's the way it used to be done pretty much as a standard. Now you don't really have to. You can just send a PDF. Real quick, Quark Express, Q-U-A-R-K, used to be the industry standard until just recently, probably the past 5 or 10 years. InDesign has kind of taken over because it's so compatible with Photoshop and Illustrator and all these other things. But Quark is used to have a lot more features than other programs, and it used to be the standard. But it basically does the same thing as InDesign does. A lot of people still use Quark if you're creating long books, like more than 100 pages or so, because InDesign can get a little hairy at that point. So if you're creating an 800-page book, Quark might be the way to go. But I don't even think I have Quark on my computer anymore, and I used to use it every single day. So that's what Quark is. Quark and InDesign basically accomplish the same thing, different tools. Different shortcuts, but the end result is the same. InDesign is just a little easier to use with the other programs. Real quick, I just want to touch on the web design programs. Web design is a totally different animal. Different rules, different strategies, different ways that you build web pages than you would build a print document. But the two that I want to talk about are Dreamweaver and Flash. Dreamweaver is kind of the industry standard, I guess, for building web pages. And to be honest, web design is not my specialty. I'm a print designer and brand designer as far as logos and brand identities and that kind of stuff. So web design, I do web design, but I usually cheat. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But Dreamweaver is a very complex program, but it allows you to build really functional websites. You can have rollovers where you move the mouse, it changes color or something. You can bring in Flash animation, so it's interactive. Dreamweaver is sort of like InDesign for the web, where it kind of creates this framework for your pages, where you can have style sheets, cascading style sheets, and you can build tables and all this kind of stuff. And Dreamweaver kind of holds it all together and uploads it to the web, publishes it. Flash is what you use to create interactive content for the web. We've all played Flash video games, I'm sure, on the internet, or watched Flash movies. Flash animations, and Flash. Flash uses vector illustration to create the illustration part of the animation. If you have like a animated character running down a hill, it's going to use vector graphics to do that, and you can actually create the graphics in Illustrator and bring them into Flash and then animate them. So it's really versatile that way, working between all these programs. Um, Flash, you can also bring video in if you want to have an actual person talking, going down the hill instead of a cartoon. You can do it that way. You can bring in sound, audio. If you if you're using GarageBand or Logic or some kind of sound thing to compose music, you can bring in an audio track. You can do all this different stuff, and you can create movies, these Flash movies, which you can embed in Dreamweaver in a web page. Or I'm sure some of you have seen these. If you see the little status bar at the beginning when you open up a web page, it says loading. Like 5, 10, 15, 20, all the way up to 100. That means it's a completely Flash-based website, and that used to be kind of frowned upon because not everybody had Flash, and a lot of people using old Internet Explorer and stuff couldn't view these web pages. Now it's a lot more accepted, and you can get some, and a lot of people use it because you can get some really cool websites using just Flash. And Flash uses something called action scripting, which is a very complex kind of design language that I know nothing about. Like, I know the very basics of it, and that's about it. So we're not going to get into that. But action scripting, basically, you create an entire Flash website is basically a movie. And let's say you have one part of the movie that's the homepage. Okay, so think of it like you have a timeline. Okay, and here is your homepage. Okay, and it kind of loops or stops at this part of the movie when you're on the homepage. Then say on your homepage you click something to go to a different page. That's already on your timeline over here, and it just advances the movie to the other part, to the About Us page. And then you can kind of read all that. You click on something else, it goes to another thing. So basically, the whole website is on this timeline, and you use action scripting to tell it where to go when people click certain areas and do all that. So it's very complex, but you can do a lot of really cool stuff. So that's it. Real quick, video editing. Graphic design is such a broad field. You can really do so much with it. Interactive stuff, motion graphics, to print design, to web design. You got to you got to find a niche. Chances are you're not going to be masters at all of these. So find out what kind of experiment with all of them and find out what really interests you. Video, if you want to do motion graphics or video editing, Final Cut Pro is pretty much the standard. That's kind of I don't know who makes that. It's on the Apple website, so it might be Apple, but Final Cut Pro is a really great video editing program. And actually, a lot of movies that come out in the theaters use Final Cut Pro for editing. You can do a lot of effects and transitions and crossfades and all this kind of stuff. Have multiple audio files and all that. So that's for video editing, but that's a whole different ballgame. We're kind of talking about print and web design, kind of static design, or Flash animation. So let's see. That's pretty much all I got. I was going to tell you about cheating. Like I said, I'm a print designer. I do brand identity and print design mainly. But as the internet apparently is not a fad, it's not going away. So I had to learn how to do websites as well. And Dreamweaver was incredibly frustrating for me because it worked. At the time it was Macromedia and it worked differently and the tools were different. It's just very harsh learning curve. And so I looked around and I found a couple programs that allow you to create websites the same way you would do print design. One of those programs is called Freeway. There's Freeway Express and Freeway Pro, and they're relatively inexpensive too. And then there's another program called SiteGrinder, and they work a little differently. I've never tried the SiteGrinder one. I have Freeway at home, and that's what I use for websites. Basically what you do is you just lay out a page just like you would in InDesign with text boxes and picture boxes and all this kind of stuff, and fonts, and get it looking the way you want to, and then you hit publish, and it automatically writes standards compliant HTML code for you and creates the website, does the web design side of it. You just make it look pretty. And for the most part, there are times when it screws up and doesn't work right. You can't figure out why, usually with interactivity issues. But it makes it a lot easier, and I can create web pages in probably a fourth of the time that it used to take me. So that's software in a nutshell. Look at the resources that I give you, and we'll continue on with printing next week.